Hey, hey guys, long time no vlog. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about supporting your favorite art educators. This can be your favorite art teachers, this can be people you admire online, this can be artists in your local community whose work you really enjoy. None of us are born in a vacuum. I did not come out of the womb fully formed. I don't think any of you guys have. But somehow, for some reason, online, people don't actually talk about who inspires them, who has taught them, and who has helped form their artistic style and their artistic career. And I think that's kind of disgusting, actually, because none of us get to where we are by ourselves. We have a lot of people who are helping us out, and we often just sort of take that help for granted. It's not owed to us. Nobody owes us anything except our parents, pretty much. So I'm going to share with you guys today some of the people who really influenced my work. And I'm also going to talk about some ways that we can help support our favorite educators and help encourage them to keep making the content that helps us out and that we enjoy. So I hope you guys will find this video helpful and informative, and I hope you'll feel inspired to share with me your favorite art educators, either in a video or in the comments below. And I'll signal boost your responses because I want to help bring better recognition to the people who are dedicating their times to educate other people. So, I don't come from a particularly artsy family. I've mentioned that when I was a kid, my dad used to draw for me, but he didn't have any sort of formal art training, and he had been highly discouraged out of drawing as a kid. So, while he could draw, he didn't really understand the mechanics of it, and he couldn't explain it to me. The first time I really had experience with somebody who knew what they were doing and could teach was by the time I got to elementary school. I had Miss Kiesman for my art teacher. Now, I wasn't in talented art, I wasn't in gifted art, I wasn't in any sort of special art programs. Nobody saw any potential in me. But I enjoyed Miss Kiesman's classes because she was an actual artist. She went home and she drew, she did art tutoring, she actually kept a sketchbook, she cared. And this might sound strange that I'm bringing this up, but a lot of art teachers, and I say this from experience dealing with art teachers and having student taught and having volunteered, most art teachers have zero art education. They have education in art education, but no actual art education. When I was at UNO, I think I had one art education major in all of my art classes, and that was in drawing fundamentals, the very first one. Many schools do not require art educators to take actual art classes. So when you have an art teacher who is an actual artist rather than someone who is just teaching art from, I don't even really understand, it really makes a huge difference. And Miss Kiesman really made a big difference to me. I was really fortunate. Those were the first art classes I'd ever taken at like my public elementary school in Luling, Louisiana. So I really lucked out that I had an actual artist who practiced actual art and was actually active in the community. She used to sell her work at the local craft fair, and that's another huge rarity. She believed in what she was doing enough to actually take a risk on it. And there's so many people who just are not comfortable with doing that. So, I was really lucky to have Miss Kiesman, and that was a really positive example in my drawing life. It made me love drawing. I remember we went over like oil pastels and drawing flowers, and I just loved doing that for some reason, and so I kept doing that for enjoyment. I was also fortunate in that one of my aunts was a jeweler. Well, she made jewelry when I was younger, and that is a type of art. And she would sell at the craft fair in my town, so I would help by volunteering at her booth, and I learned a lot about sales and talking to people from watching my aunt sell at the local craft fair. So that was another experience where I was actually really lucky to have somebody influence me in a positive manner, in a business-like manner regarding art early from life. The next teacher I had who left an impact on me was Mr. Bumgarner when I was in 7th and 8th grade. So he was an actual artist as well. He also had dwarfism, and the kids at my school were horrible to him. Like, just like disgustingly awful, like shoved him in a garbage can, awful people. And they had zero respect for what he did. They had zero respect for what he was trying to show them. And he'd been at that school for like 20 plus years. You know, this guy really put his time in. He was another teacher who sold his art in the local community. He was another teacher who would actually donate and dedicate his time to tutoring others. So here's somebody who was invested. I got lucky. I had two teachers who really, really cared about art. And I remember just really hating how everybody treated him and how disrespectful they were and how they treated his class like it was a joke. And so I'd known him from before because my mom had taught at that school for 20 years as well. So like I knew Mr. B from like being a little kid, but my parents never thought to pay for me to have art tutoring or art lessons. I don't know. I had ballet and I was terrible at ballet and I'm not a ballerina now, but it never crossed their mind. And I did actually ask them and it was just like, why would you want that? Right? Small town thinking. But that would have been really cool. And that was something that was in the community. It wasn't accessible. It wasn't an option for me. But those were two actual teachers I had that left a big impact on my art education. In fact, I thought all art teachers were actual artists who did actual art in their spare time and that they just loved art so much that they wanted to teach because of Miss Kiesman and because of Mr. Bumgarner and because my brother had Miss Herrera, who was also phenomenal, although she played favorites, and Miss Madonna, who was also really good, and Miss Lavulo, who was also really good and was my mentor my senior year when I was doing senior project because there were no comic people that they could refer me to because Hahnville doesn't know anything about the actual creative arts. So like those early years were actually moderately, like now that I'm looking back on it and like thinking of other small towns and other people I know who are from really small towns, I'm like, I really got lucky because it wasn't until I was leaving UNO, until I was about to graduate from UNO with my first degree, and I went back to Hahnville to volunteer teach, that I realized that I was helping this teacher. She's a very sweet lady, but she'd been a math teacher, and then somehow, because she had special education, she decided she was going to be an art teacher, but she had no art background, and she was teaching from handouts, and she let the kids do whatever they wanted, so they had no respect for her at all. That was the first time I really thought about how being an artist is not a requirement to teach art and understanding art and knowing perspective and knowing construction and knowing color theory and knowing how light works. None of that's an actual requirement at some schools in order to teach. And then I kind of thought back to my UNO education. I was like, yeah, I've never really had any art education majors in classes with me. That's really weird. They should be required to know how to draw. Not in Louisiana. Maybe that's changed, but not in Louisiana. So, I was actually really lucky because I grew up with this thought that if you were teaching art, it was because you loved art, because I'd had teachers who loved art. So that's two early influences. And then while I was at UNO, so, and I'm sure you guys can tell, I'm passionate. I love drawing, I love comics, I love illustration, I love traditional media. I'm passionate, but that doesn't mean I'm proficient, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm talented. There's certain things I've gotten to be very good at, and certain things that I'm still learning how to do. And it's probably going to be a lifelong process for me, and it is what it is, and that's fine, and we all take the time we take to get there, so I'll get there eventually. But I was not like a shining star. I was okay. I didn't pick up concepts quickly, but I would spend the extra time to learn them. So I would attend the optional figure drawing lessons when we had that, and I would stay after for hours and hours in my acrylic painting class, and I'm terrible at acrylics, and try to get better and redo the same painting over and over and over again. And I took optional drawing classes, and I stayed, like, I was in the print lab every single day on the machines, especially for intaglio. and for screen printing. So like I wasn't necessarily good, but I was dedicated. And so I had a couple of teachers who kind of noticed that and were kind enough to take me under their wings. Richard Johnson and Cheryl Hayes kind of looked out for me while I was at UNO, which was a huge help because my major was hypermedia. And they brought in this guy who will be, let's just call him Voldemort. For funsies. Let's call him Voldemort. They brought in this young dude who was like just finished grad school in like Pittsburgh. Had not a whole lot of like practical art experience under his belt, been in like 2 gallery shows. They brought him in to head the hypermedia department, and he took a huge dislike to me. He hated me. And that is what it is. It's fine. But like I would have really taken that to heart if it hadn't been for Cheryl and Richard Johnson, who were just, they like really went to bat for me, and they just made my last year at UNO not miserable, especially because that was the year my dad was dying of cancer. So that was a hard year already, and I kind of just threw myself into either driving back and forth to Luling every other day to go be with my dad or my art homework. So that was how I got through that. So they were hugely influential for me as well, and I'm really still appreciative of their belief in me to this day. So when I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of art friends. There were like artists in my group, but we weren't friends, and I wouldn't have shown them my stuff because I really didn't want their opinion. But there was this girl, her name was Sarah. We were actually online friends. We met through Aimster, which was a music sharing program, and we used to play Ragnarok together. And Sarah was a few years older than me. She was in college when I was in high school, and for some reason she tried to help me, like really tried to help me improve at drawing, and I blew her off because I was really immature and I didn't have a very good background, and when it came to art, I didn't have a lot of discipline at the time. All I knew was that I wanted to draw comics, and I wanted to have like this super cartoony style, so I was like, I don't really need to understand perspective and anatomy at that time. But she spent years sending me resources, sending me PDFs, drawing over my work to show me how to improve. She spent so much time trying to help me, and it was just like a bottomless hole. Like I was not getting it. I was not as appreciative as I should have been. I really just took it for granted. So I may never actually get the chance to tell Sarah as an adult, thank you. But thank you, Sarah, for like sticking with me and like kicking my butt and telling me the things I didn't want to hear that I really needed to hear. Thank you for, even if I did not have the ability and I didn't have the drive at the time and I wasn't open to suggestion and critique, which is all the truth, thank you for trying. And I know now, as someone who has been in your position, how exhausting that is, how annoying that is, and how you probably wanted to slap me around. And thank you for being patient with me and not doing those things. I think about you dedicating that time away from your work, away from your comic endeavors, away from you finding paying work to try and help me, and I am really appreciative of you trying to pay it forward in that regard, and I hope that it wasn't a waste on your part. So thank you so much, Sarah. And kind of concurrently with Sarah, but really afterwards, like we were still talking, but she'd kind of given up on trying to help me. I mean, she tried for many years, okay? She didn't just like, oh wow, this is hard. Like, she really tried. I used to lurk on Something Awful on their creative boards, where they were always sharing really great resources, really great critiques. I learned a lot from there. And it's still probably a great resource. I just haven't been back in 10 years. And I also used to use 4chan's IC board, which was the artwork critique board. And they were vicious on there. And my work deserved to get severed. Like, it was terrible. But what I learned the most from was not their red line critiques, because I hadn't been taught the basis to understand what they were saying. At the time, UNO had a very... because the art fundamentals classes were intended for majors and non-majors, they really watered it down so that people who did not give any cares at all about art and were gonna just like half-ass their homework, they kind of gear the assignments and the assignment difficulty around them rather than the actual majors. So like perspective and to an extent the construction of the human figure were kind of skipped over a lot. So it wasn't until I read on Icy and the creative forums, shoot, I can't remember the name that 4chan, I mean, that's something awful had for it at the time, but their creative art board, they really recommended the Loomis books and Glenn Villepeu, and I know you guys who watch my stuff, you have heard me talk about that because that was huge for me. I learned perspective, I learned anatomy, I still use a lot of the stuff that that came up in Glenn Villepeu's drawing manual. I use that every single day. It was great. It is great. It is an anatomy class for animators and comic artists and illustrators, guys. It's an anatomy class in a book. It's like a $30 book, you know, and a good anatomy class can be $3,000 plus. I know because I took constructive human anatomy at Scad and it was like $3,000 plus materials. But the Glenn Villepeu drawing manual is a phenomenal resource. Don't just read it, copy the illustrations, practice what is taught in that book to your own drawings, work from reference. I cannot recommend it highly enough, especially if you're struggling with poses, you're struggling with the human figure, you don't really understand how the body is built. Please, 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 please read that book. That book was huge. So when I finished with UNO, I felt like I didn't really have a very good background to go into art, so I pursued further education by getting an MFA from Scad. And while at Scad, I had a few professors who really left a positive impact on my life. So you guys are going to probably notice a reoccurring theme here with me, where I really get along well with teachers who value determination and the ability to take what is said and try to make positive changes. I really value those sort of teachers over teachers who just praise merit. So the three teachers who really stood out for me in my education were Tom Lyle. I had him for one of my intensives classes, so he taught, he focused so much on perspective because we were all terrible at perspective. So thanks to Tom Lyle, I understand perspective and I can do 1 through 3 point with not too much problems, and then anything higher than that, I got to pull out one of my reference books and work from that. But so Tom Lyle was a huge, huge help. His critiques were really good. And the format for those were everyone put their work up on the wall, and when the class was talking about your piece, you didn't say anything at all until the end, and that was only to ask questions. It wasn't to make excuses. So you could ask how something could be done or how you should handle it better, but you couldn't just make excuses. And I really grew a lot in that time period. It was very helpful to me. And I know that most people do not have access to that sort of an education, and that's okay, because there's a lot of really, really good resources online for that. And I talk about that over on the blog, and I've been tweeting the heck about that today, like tweeting so much about good online art resources and including links. So you guys might want to go check my Twitter out. It's also NatoSoup. Or I don't think my YouTube handle is NatoSoup, which is a little weird. But it's NATTOSOUP. So yeah, and maybe I'll link some in the description below. There's a lot of really good ones on YouTube as well. I also had David Duncan in my second semester. I think I had him like 3 times. I really like Duncan's classes. And Duncan was really all about like how comics work, the mechanics of comics. And if you're studying along at home, Understanding Comics and Writing Words and Drawing Pictures are 2 books that are excellent and will fill you in on some of the things we talked about. But the way I structure panels, the way I think about pages, so okay, the structure of 7-inch Kara is arcs, which are then books, chapters, scenes, pages, tiers, panels. And introducing the tier into my writing really helped a lot. And the tier is just that line where all any panels that are on that line, right? And that plus Mark Neese's writing class just really helped me better structure my comics, helped me better format them, helped me plan for them a lot better. At the time, I was like kind of writing this other comic. It was like slice of life, YA, set in a college setting. It was supposed to be comedic. It had no ending. you have to have an ending before you can start. And shoot, I lost track. And then I was working on this like parody of the superhero genre, but I mean mostly I was just playing around, and that was great. At Scad they really pushed, you do a lot of mini comics so you can figure yourself out before you commit to a serious comic. And shoot, I was kind of cheating there, because there's actually several teachers at Scad who left a really big impact on my drawing and my art and my comics. I also had Paul Hudson, which I really liked his classes a lot, particularly his Constructive Human Anatomy. I thought was an excellent class. We had to sculpt 2 clay crochets in the middle of Savannah summer. So really I sculpted 4 because it kept melting and I had to keep redoing it. But I learned a lot about how the human body is set up, and while that isn't always information that someone who draws as cartoony as I do utilizes, I do try to refresh it every year or so just so that it's there if I need it. And I also had David Gildersleeve, whose classes I really enjoyed, and he did a lot of watercolor work, and that really inspired me because his comics were beautiful, and I was like, I really want to make comics for kids who are really underserved, because I was doing my thesis at the time and I was reading like 50 plus kids comics, and like so many of them are just, especially for like easy reading, early reading, so not your super little kids. Toon Books has that really well covered, and not your YA and your middle grade kids, but like your elementary school kids. They're just like, other than Raina Telgemeier and Dave Roman, like nobody really writes for them, nobody really cares. So I wanted to write for them, and I grew up reading these beautiful picture books. Well, my mother would read me these beautiful picture books, so I wanted to make a watercolor children's comic that sort of took from that beautiful children's painting heritage. So Gildersleeve was a huge influence for that. I think that's everybody from Scad. So after graduating, you still continue to learn. I still continue to learn. I learned a lot about doing conventions. I used to do them with my friend Heidi Black, but she moved to California, so I've been doing them alone. And me and Kiriska, who is another former Scad kid who is also a convention artist, we formed How to Be a Con Artist on Tumblr like 4 years ago. And I learned a lot about conventions and prepping and planning and resources and manufacturers just by talking to Kiriska. So she was a big influence on sort of me leveling up my stuff for a year. And I learned about working with CreateSpace specifically from Heidi, because I'd helped her kickstart Electric Abyss, her art book, the year before, and she'd printed through CreateSpace. So I hired her to lay out my book because I knew she would know what their requirements were. And I ended up learning a lot about layout, and she pretty much taught me how to use InDesign and how to lay out minis and how to lay out regular books too in InDesign. So that was really huge. And I also really got into Copic markers after meeting Heidi. Part of that was like Scad bringing in like a Copic wrap, but part of that was also Heidi enjoyed them, and I was like, those look really cool, and I've only played with these a little bit, and I'd only had like the crummy Prismacolors that have like the tri-chisel nib and then the tiny bullet nib, and so working with like Copic sketches really made a big difference for me personally and how I approached my art. So I went into Scad like all digital, and I left Scad like 100% traditional, do not really want to do digital. I mean, I do digital now, but my comic is not, and my favorite work is not. So that was a big transition and a big growth, and like just the people in that environment and the other artists I met at the time were a big influence on my stuff, and probably still a big influence. I mean, as artists, unless you exist in a vacuum and you never go online and you never look at anybody else's art, you're constantly being influenced by other people's stuff. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, we only tend to talk about like the super popular people. Natasha Alighieri inspired my comic, like that, right? But really it's just like the average Joes who inspire our work the most, if we're being honest with ourselves. So I have a surprise coming in February, so I don't want to spoil it, But one of my more recent friends, and I talk about her like a lot in my videos, Sam, is a fellow comic artist, but she's also obsessed with traditional supplies. She's Sam from Burn It Box, and we exchange stuff really frequently, and Sam's is becoming a big influence on the materials I've been playing with. Partially because she's been sending me stuff, but also because she shows me what she's making, and I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. I want to try something similar to that. And you guys should check out Sam's work because A, she's a comic person, and she is doing this comic called Linked. And I can link that in the description below. And it sort of reminds me of Renee, but in like a good way. Like I'm enjoying it. It's about like a magical demon girl and her human friend and casting steels and fighting evil. So if you like that kind of stuff, you will like Linked. But she also noodles around with traditional supplies a whole lot, and she's like one of the contributing members for manga apps over on DeviantArt, and that sort of assembles and aggregates is a good word. Aggregates really good art tutorials to help other people. So there is a desire for her to help educate others, and she does a lot of tutorials herself, and she also makes these really fantastic Photoshop brushes. So you guys should really check out her work. You can check out her brushes, which are free to download if you're using it on your original art at shooting-stars.org. And what is her DA handle is Cabocha, C-A-B-O-C-H-A. So you guys should really go check out her work. And Heidi's stuff is usually at Electric Abyss, ELECTRICABYSS.com. Or Heidi M. Black is like her Tumblr and her Instagram. Her art's also super great, and you should definitely check it out. Another big influence on my work recently is my friend Amy Sukiyono, who does Find Sometimes Rain, which is like a josei webcomic, and you can find that at findsometimesrain.com. I'm pretty sure that's it, and it's great. You guys should read it, especially it's a very sensitive portrayal of depression and anxiety that I think you guys might really enjoy, so you should definitely check that out as well. And gee whiz, I'm sure I am just not doing anybody justice. There's been so many wonderful influences and inspirations, and there's so many wonderful, generous artists on YouTube who are constantly sharing their stuff. They're constantly showing people how to do things. Education is really important to them. So please take a moment and leave me like 5. Leave me 5 of your favorites in the comments below. It can't be that hard. There's so many. 5 good ones, and I will cross-promote them to help bring more focus for them. And try not to just pick like the most popular people. Try to pick people who like really do have an impact on you, who maybe their positivity keeps you making art, or maybe their use of certain materials inspires you to try new things. Like really think hard and try to pick some unknown gems. I mean, you can link popular people too. I'm not saying don't. If they influence you, then clearly link them. But like try to really think about people who might otherwise get overlooked, and try to do them a solid today and give them a little shout out, give them a little signal boost. Can do more to help them out than maybe you realize. You are not just a nobody. You're not just, oh, I'm just a hobbyist and nobody cares. No, you are a person, and you know people. You have friends, you have family, you probably know other artists, you know other people who are learning, who are trying. You can really help these people who are helping you out just by like dropping a link on your Facebook and being like, hey guys, check out this video. I really enjoyed what she did with the Prismacolors. Hey guys, check out this video. I didn't realize you could do that with melted crayons. Hey guys, check out this video. I didn't know you could do that with gouache. That really helps a lot. You might think nobody clicks that, but people will click it because they trust your good word. It's like, oh, I love what she has to say about all these other things, and she's my coffee friend, and she's really smart, and she's really funny, so I'm going to check out what she likes because she's got good taste. Or I'm going to check out what he likes because he and I read all the same comics, so if he likes this, I would like that. Like, that's how this works. And if you want these people to keep making stuff that helps you out, and if you want them to not just put it behind a paywall, this is how you can do that. You can help them by expanding their audience audiences by being effusive in your love. Effusive, like like bubbling up lots of praise and love. You need to let them know these things because people don't. So you can be that one person who actually makes a positive difference, and you may end up making their whole week. So yeah, this was an art vlog. I'm sorry I haven't seen as much of you guys as I'm sorry I haven't seen as much of you guys as I normally would, and I'm sorry our videos have they're kind of right now. We are working on something that's going to be a huge deal, hopefully in February. It is a big announcement. I am super excited about it, but I can't say anything about it until we're ready to do it. So keep an eye out, because I will definitely make an announcement here, but it's taking up like all of my time, all of my editor's time. So we're doing the best we can. I have a huge backlog of great videos for you guys, but he doesn't have time to edit them because he's doing that other thing. So I hope you guys will keep an eye on this channel, and thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to comment with your favorite artists. Bye.